Pencil is a great medium for drawing. All my first architectural drawings were entirely in pencil. Location sketching or street sketching on a trip to Europe in 2018. I got to sit in the cool shade on a 30-degree hot summer's Berlin day and draw one of my favourite architectural structures. Right now, most of my drawing is directly in ink without any pencil underdrawing at all. At times it feels a bit risky and challenging, but when it works, it produces a drawing with a lively, loose line, and it's a process I'm really enjoying experimenting with. But pencil can also be used as part of a longer process in drawing. We can create a pencil underdrawing, which we intend from the start to ink over with pen. Most of the hundreds of drawings that I've posted on my Instagram account were created in this way, using a 4x4 grid with a pencil underdrawing first. That let me explore detail and accuracy in a way that I really enjoyed. And I took full advantage of the safety net that the pencil gave me, that I could erase and refine my lines while I still had the chance before I inked over them. But I came to realize there were also some shortcomings, some pitfalls with this method of drawing. Let me explain now what they were and how I think I managed to overcome them in my drawing process. So I would draw a 4x4 grid on my reference photo and on my paper, and I would use that grid to transfer the image on the reference relatively quickly and accurately onto my drawing paper. Then I would apply an ink line over the pencil work, and finally I would add marker tone in shades of grey to it to create whatever final visual effects I wanted. So the strengths of this process are pretty obvious. I can erase and refine my lines at this stage until I'm satisfied that the proportions and the various elements of the scene are all accurate, are all the way I want them to be, before I take the irrevocable step of putting ink on the page. But the problems may not be so obvious. But as I look at accounts on Instagram, which have clearly been drawn first with pencil and then inked over the top of, the issues that I see in the finished artworks, I usually see in every post that that artist has put on their account. And the first problem with this process is that once this pencil outline is drawn, the process can become more like tracing over the top of this with our pen to produce this. So instead of a line being drawn from my reference onto my paper, I'm actually drawing a line on top of a line to produce this. And if your reaction is, yes, but what difference does that make? Can I suggest that the feel of the line work that we draw can hugely impact the overall look and feel of the finished drawing. Compare these two pencil drawings. Here we have a very precisely drawn detail of part of the facade of the Musée du Louvre. Now, this drawing was also mapped out with a 4x4 grid, and a great deal of care has been taken to reproduce the rich carvings and sculptures and architectural detail of the original in my drawing. Now compare the effect of this with this drawing. I very quickly and very briskly sketched on an extremely windy day of Newcastle Cathedral. While this was drawn in pencil and I could have erased the lines, it was a very quick gestural drawing, and if the fact that I only had 15 minutes before I had to meet someone wasn't enough to make me draw quickly, the fact that it was blowing a hurricane and it was all I could do to clench my drawing pad and not let it blow away like a kite over the Pacific Ocean also encouraged me to draw every line quickly and not to be too precious about perfection. And I've got to say, for all the detail and precision of this drawing, this is one of my favourite drawings that I've done. I just love the vigour and the life, the vitality that the line work has here. Which I think makes this drawing look a lot more accurate, look a lot more lively, which I feel makes this drawing much more compelling to look at than this drawing for all the precision and accuracy and detail that its line work has. So the feel of our line work can be extremely important to our finished drawing. And if I am just tracing over with pen a line I've already drawn, it's very easy for that line to become a relatively lifeless line that doesn't even connect with other lines in any functional way, because I can really just draw lines in any order, anywhere, rather than creating an element all at once with rapid gestural lines. And it's not that one method is better than the other, although I may prefer the results of one method over another. But by merely tracing over our pencil, we rule out a lot of really interesting line drawing techniques and effects that we can create, but which don't happen when we're just drawing a line on top of another line. In effect, creating a copy on top of our original drawing. Our second problem is that when we're drawing our pen lines, which in fact are the only lines we're going to see at the end of this drawing process, the temptation could be to stop observing our reference so carefully and end up just concentrating on our pencil lines and tracing over the top of them. So instead of possibly improving our pencil outline by taking this opportunity to have a second good look observing at our reference and double checking the pencil lines we've drawn as we put our pen lines over the top, possibly spotting inaccuracies or seeing details that weren't so obvious, or perhaps we didn't have room that we couldn't include with the thickness of our pencil, but which we possibly could now include with a thinner line from our pen. Instead of being able to take advantage of that, we do the opposite of that, and we really just concentrate on looking at our pencil line as we in effect trace over the top of it. And any inaccuracies or shortcomings of our pencil line become permanent as we ink over the top of it. And if we're not careful, we can get the double whammy, which is when we don't give our best observation effort to the pencil outline, because a part of our mind in the background is thinking, oh, this is just the pencil, you'll be erasing this. This doesn't have to be so perfect. And yet, when we do the ink line over the top, we'll be tempted to think what we've just talked about, that instead of cross-checking with our reference, we'll simply be drawing over the tops of any shortcomings that our pencil has. So my tip, the method I use when I'm drawing, is that when I put my ink lines over the top of my pencil, it's like I pretend the pencil line isn't there. I observe my reference with the same detail that I would if in fact I hadn't done the pencil stage. And I'm surprised at how often I spot inaccuracies, not so much in the broad, general, larger lines, but in some of the details, how some lines connect with other parts. Sometimes things that didn't actually quite make sense in our reference make better sense the second time round, observing carefully. Of course, I still use my pencil lines as a way of helping me draw accurate and precise pen lines. Otherwise, there's no point in having drawn them. The third shortcoming that I think this process can also lead to is regarding our outlines as a bit like a colouring in book. So for instance, let's say I have a tree that I pencil in a fairly silhouette form. Once I put my pen around that outline, the temptation can be, because we've now stopped observing our reference very carefully, to think, oh well, this is a tree, so I need a leaf texture here. And again, without actually even looking at our reference very carefully, we simply use this pattern as fill between our outline lines. Or if we have a brick wall, again, we trace over our pencil outline with our pen, and then I know there are bricks here. So again, without looking carefully at my reference, I start to use whatever brick pattern I use to fill in this wall. And because my careful observation and referencing is lapsing, this becomes more a pattern than actually in some way representing the actual wall in our photo. And so my perspective angles start to be not very accurate, and my foreshortening of the length of the bricks as they move along the wall is either inaccurate or non-existent. So because this process can encourage a sense of drawing outlines and then filling them in later, if we're not careful, we can adopt a bit of the mentality of a colouring in book, only instead of colouring in with colours, we fill in the spaces that we've created with patterns that in some way represent the textures or the basic elements of what we're drawing in a way that doesn't actually represent what we're seeing in our reference. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Drawing a pencil outline, which we then use as a basis for our ink line work, can be a great technique to use. It has some really nice strengths, but it also has some traps if we're not careful. It can encourage a fairly lifeless line that doesn't relate directly to what it's drawing or where it is in our overall scene, and it can create a bit of a lifeless wooden effect. This whole process can work against us and actually encourage less careful observation, instead of taking the advantage of the opportunity to observe our reference twice carefully and to really nail the ink work, which is going to become our final version, so that when we apply the tone or the hatching, we've got a lovely accurate representation to go with. But however you draw, I hope you have fun with it. I'll see you next time. Bye.